It's a tale of two teachers. Which one do you think has a better relationship with their students? Which one are you?
Welcome to EPI's Launch Your Classroom. I'm Kyle Pope. Building rapport at the door is one of the most important things a teacher can do for classroom management. In fact, a recent study showed that teachers who greet their students as they come into the door reduce their behavioral management issues by 20%. 20%. Why is that? Well, it's because it feels good to be welcome. As an adult, imagine going into a new job or to a restaurant or even to a party. You expect to be greeted, right? Why should a student expect anything different? And as a teacher, this is something easy. It's natural. It's something that doesn't require a lot of planning. So the next time that you're in the hallway, be it before school or during class change, take a look and see which teachers are out there speaking with students. I'll guarantee you that 9 times out of 10, those are going to be the teachers whose students say are their favorite. It's that powerful. The first few weeks I was a teacher, I was really nervous. I wanted to be, the greatest teacher ever. So before class would start, I would spend my time trying to memorize every single word of my direct instruction. I was scrambling around, making sure every material was in place. I wanted to make sure that my PowerPoints were ready to queue up as soon as the class started. But when the bell finally did ring and I looked up, there were all these strangers staring back at me. Now, sure, I had taken time to memorize their name and I had a general idea of where they were academically, but I didn't really know anything else about them. The room was tense. I didn't like it. I wanted to change that, but I wasn't sure where to start. Then a few days later, I was outside of my classroom during class change, and I was speaking to the teacher who had her class beside me. And as we were carrying on this conversation, she started taking breaks and talking to students as they entered her classroom. She would say simple stuff like, "Hey Juan, how are you doing today?" Or, "Hey Jennifer, I really like that piece that you wrote in class yesterday." To me, I was confused at first. I thought she was being really rude and interrupting our conversation. But then I noticed that her students were smiling when they entered the classroom, whereas mine were just strolling past, not even making eye contact with me. She was on to something. So now we're going to go into a real classroom and see how we put this into practice. Here we are at the classroom door. It's a location that is going to give you the opportunity to speak to every single student every single day, right? This is how they enter your classroom. So we're going to talk about the top 5 strategies to help you build rapport at the door. Number 1, say every student's name, right? Greet them by that name. We've all been in one of those situations where we've met someone, we learned their name, and we bump into them later and they don't remember ours. You know how that feels, right? So it's so important to say their name and recognize them as individuals. Number 2, make eye contact. When you make eye contact with the student, they know that you're focused on them. If you're looking at the floor or looking off into the ceiling, you're probably thinking about something else, focused on something else, and it's something that they will pick up on. So make sure you make that eye contact. Number 3, build rapport verbally. Say something specific to that student. Maybe they got a new haircut, maybe they're wearing a t-shirt that has a comic book character on it. You can ask them about it. Maybe you've learned a little bit about them from having icebreakers in your classroom before and know they're really into playing the piano. You can ask them if they learned any new songs, right? Number 4, this is going to be a nonverbal signal. So it can be a wave, it can be a head nod, it can be a thumbs up if it's something that they're into, anything that's directed specifically towards them. As we know, some students are more visual type learners, so they'll key in on what you're doing with your hands or with your body language more than they will with what you're saying. Number 5, preparative statements. This can be to help you prepare, as maybe you have a student who's coming in a bad mood, what you may want to say to them to try to cheer them up. But it can also be to help your students prepare for your lesson. Maybe you have a student who misbehaves often, and you could say something to them like, hey, I got a really important job for you today in class. I think you're gonna like it, right? They'll be thinking, what's that job Mr. Pope has prepared for me? Instead of maybe misbehaving once they enter your classroom. All right, so now we're gonna go back into the studio and talk to Ryan about why it's so important to build rapport at the door. We are extremely lucky to have Ryan Hennessy joining us in the studio today. Ryan, welcome.
Thanks, Kyle. I'm really excited to be here on Launch Classroom.
Great.
Yeah, it's a first for me, so thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ryan is a master of rapport. I know this from working with him. It just seems like such a natural talent. He's so good at it. So Ryan, I have to ask you, what is the secret?
First of all, I really appreciate it. Might be a little overstatement, but I'll take it. I think the key is, as an educator, is just remembering our baseline. We have a lot to do, and that's not going away anytime soon, right? Grades, paperwork, all that. And that's part of our profession. But your baseline is that you care about students, and you probably struggle to find time. The key to rapport is holding on to that you care about them, being authentic, and taking any opportunity you have to just connect with them by talking.
Yeah. I think we lose sight of that sometimes. Even if we are focused on the kids, it's usually for academics, right? We want them to make that grade. We want them to pass. We want to see them do well on the test. But they are also people too, and people that we care about.
Yeah, it's a highly pressurized environment for all parties.
Yeah.
Teachers need academic growth. Like, that's the reality of our job. And the students can do it. But the problem with pressure is pressure actually cuts your ability to be productive from both sides. What rapport does is it kind of reacts with the pressure to offset it.
Yeah.
And in this example, you have a small opportunity every day to just ramp it down a little bit.
Yeah.
It's really useful in that way.
I like that you talked about the student's perspective with pressure, because we've been talking a lot about the teacher's perspective or what the teacher should do. From a student's point of view, why is this important?
Well, students have a few times in their life where they've got different demands, different rules, different understandings of what their role is, right? When you think about the time of day that you would do this strategy most, it's in the morning.
Right.
The biggest transition of a given child's day, probably. They're at home, they know where they fit, maybe they don't, different kind of rules. Then they get in a bus or a car and they show up at school and they've got a lot of pressure. New rules, new expectations, grades, tests, and so on.
Yeah.
So you have a unique opportunity right there to help that child not see this as a new pressure, but as a welcoming environment where a caring, stable, constant adult is going to be there to, if nothing else, say good morning, right? No magic there. It's just a nice way to transition.
Provide kind of stability that they can count on. When they get off the bus, they may be suffering from some separation anxiety, or maybe there even is a sense of relief when they get to school. But like you said, either way, there's going to be a big transition there. And if you can make that transition smoother, then you've done your job.
If you're not in for that, if I told you, listen, I've got a research-based strategy, the strategy is shown to increase student growth, to lessen behavior management problems, and build rapport. And it's going to take you 15 minutes a morning. It's going to make your students feel better. It's going to relieve that pressure. Would you do it?
Absolutely.
And then I would tell you, okay, so here it is. Stand outside your door and try to connect with each kid.
Right.
In that context, it's almost unbelievable.
Yeah. So we were going over in our tips earlier preparative statements to get students ready for that class. Bringing the academics back into it. Right. So how can we help them out? What's the use of preparative statements?
Preparative statements for me have always been, and maybe you can relate, so when you're teaching and you're really engaged and you're kind of constantly monitoring, you have thoughts where you're like, oh, this student needs to do this, and I can't forget to work with them on that. And then what happens as you get a lot of things going on with your day. You lose those, right? You start saying, oh man, I forgot to do this, or I should have done that, but I had this meeting. Preparative statements can work for you if you will think of changing that, oh, I meant to say, to I'm going to take some time in the morning when I say good morning to get that going. If I can give you an example, if you have,
Please, yeah.
So if you have a student in math, and this has happened to me, let's say you're working on a really complex kind of visual array model of some multiplication things, and you know you're going to have students who maybe don't have the depth of understanding or just the memorization of multiplication tables, which will be really helpful in this. Now you could say, listen, for your homework, I need you to learn your sevens multiplication facts, right? Or you could say to the student when they come in, and I prefer this, hey, listen, I know there's some bell ringer work on the board, but in math, this is what we're going to do. If you could pick 3 multiplication facts of the sevens and memorize those, when it comes time, you'll know 3 answers, and I'll call on you for one, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And then think about the kid's outlook. You've had that moment to connect with them, let you know you care. They're going to learn 3 multiplication tables. I mean, that's huge.
Right.
And I think that's a preparative statement.
Yeah.
But it's got a lot of uses for you.
You're helping them build confidence, and the next day when that child comes in and you're standing at the door, you have something else to talk to them about. That was a great job yesterday, you really nailed those multiplication that you learned, and when I called on you, you had it ready, that was perfect.
So there you've got it stacking, right? It's complementing. There's your next day.
Yeah.
So you're a teacher. Tell me this, the student that we're talking about, 3 days later, you need them to learn 3 more. What do you do?
Yeah, you ask them again, and they're going to say, it worked out so great last time. Absolutely, I'm going to do what you want me to do. So they're going to be more engaged with your lesson, and it's going to help them to continue to build that confidence and want to do more.
Mr. Pope, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
Door rapport. You got it. Yeah, I mean, that's what I would do. And not least here is that with math especially, but other contents, processes, students often come to us with a negative association. Right. You're changing it. That's where the growth starts.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
The beauty of Rapport at the Door strategy is that it's simple, and as we've seen, it works. However, like any other strategy, sometimes there's complications. So we're going to give you 3 suggestions to help you avoid unnecessary problems. Be present. When you go out to stand in front of your door, leave everything else behind. Okay? Keep your cell phone in your pocket. Don't take your laptop out. Try to push all that grading papers out of your mind and put 100% of your focus onto the students. Be authentic. Take the 5 tips that we gave you earlier and make them your own. You'll need to find your own voice, your own way to do them, so it comes across as being genuine. Don't put on an act. Students will read right through that. Be reliable. Consistency, consistency, consistency. Students are going to come to expect you to be out there, to greet them, to smile. For some of them, that may be the brightest part of their day. If you only go out once or twice, you're not going to build the type of rapport that you want with your students. So now we're going to talk about how beginning a good day starts before you even get to the classroom. Amanda's going to tell us a little bit about healthy morning routines.
So, which type of person are you in the morning? The chronic alarm snoozer, the mad dasher looking for their car keys, or the person who thinks they can roll out of bed and be ready in 5 minutes? I have to admit, I'm the last type. We've all been there, tired, in a rush, and barely getting to work on time. You may feel stressed out and negative, and you aren't even in the classroom yet. As a teacher, you do tons of work to set students up for success. But we often ignore what it takes to start our own days off right. Students are perceptive. If you're frowning and have low energy when greeting them at the door, Why should they expect an engaging class? We hear it all the time. How you start is how you finish. Take control of your day by having an effective morning routine. Here are some ways you can start. Get organized the night before. Prepare breakfast, pick out your clothes, and put everything you'll need for the day by the front door. Go to sleep and wake up at the same time every day. Most adults require 7 or 8 hours of sleep to feel well rested. Be realistic about your time and do things in order. Personally, I like to have a long breakfast, so I go to bed about 20 minutes earlier to compensate. Finally, take a moment to do something you enjoy. This could be 10 minutes at the kitchen table enjoying your coffee, or sitting on the couch with a book. Research shows that basking in a pleasurable experience helps extend the feeling. Give yourself that positive moment and take it with you to the classroom. Morning routines aren't one size fits all. What works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for you. Be organized, listen to your needs, and try to understand who you are. Do what it takes to walk out the door feeling happy and energized.
Those were some really good tips. And now we actually have Amanda who's joining us in the studio. So Amanda, welcome to Launch Your Classroom.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Kyle.
Great. So when I was listening to you earlier, you talked about the importance of morning routine, specifically doing something that you like or taking that time for yourself in the morning. I know for me personally, when I try to do that, what happens is I start thinking of everything else I have to do for the day during that quiet time. Do you have any advice?
My advice would be to, first of all, we talk a lot about organization. So give yourself enough time to really enjoy that moment so that when you get there, you're not like, oh, I've got a million other things I could be doing or I should be doing. You're like, I'm already secure, I'm feeling prepared for the day, this is me time. And then if you're doing something that you already enjoy that relaxes you, just kind of, really relish that feeling and just try and, if those thoughts come, accept them, but, just turn your focus back to that task that you're in the moment with.
Yeah, so kind of don't hang on with them.
Right.
The thoughts are going to come, but just let them flow through.
Exactly.
Great. So also, I know a lot of people have a problem with getting to bed on time. Maybe they're addicted to that TV show and they just want to watch one more episode, or, they're on their phone, on social media, speaking with other people. What are some tips on how to put that down and get ready to sleep?
Now, this is, I think, a problem that a lot of us face now, with smartphones and TV and so many things at our fingertips. And what I would recommend is, again, try and be organized and be conscious. Say, I know that I need to go to bed at 10 in order to get that great 8 hours of sleep. So at 9:30, I'm going to put away my phone. I'm going to turn the TV off, and I'm going to practice what's known as good sleep hygiene. And that means not having the screens in front of you, maybe taking a second with a cup of tea. Some people enjoy. That's nice and relaxing. Taking a warm bath. And then when it's time for bed, go lay down in your bed, lights off, and just try and relax and not have any other type of stimulus around you.
Great. That's a wonderful suggestion. I know sometimes too that our personal life can creep into our professional life. We start thinking of maybe something, a stressor at home, and then we end up taking that into the school with us. Is there any way that we can kind of push that aside?
Right. So again, that's reality. Sometimes you're going to have personal problems outside of school that are going to be on your mind and going to be a stressor on your life. And so you just have to be very aware that your students deserve the best teacher you. They don't necessarily need that personal you. And you as a teacher, that can kind of be a separate persona than who you are in your personal life. So just try and keep that separation. And I think if you're going through a tough time, those moments of peace and just really enjoying yourself are going to be especially important. That 10 minutes in the morning where you can just relax. And if you feel like you're having a particularly stressful day, I would even recommend you drive to school, maybe you're in your car, just taking a second, a minute at your steering wheel, just close your eyes and just try and mentally prepare yourself. Tell yourself, okay, I'm here, I'm ready for school, I'm ready for my students. Let's get started.
That's all great advice. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you.
Earlier in today's episode, I spoke with you about how standing outside your classroom, greeting students can help you reduce behavioral management issues by 20%. That's for you. That's why you should use this. But let me give you another statistic. The average American child only receives about 12 minutes of directed attention from their parents a day. Those same kids have about 3 hours, not really supervised, technically alone. With you, they'll be in your class for 50 minutes or for 90 minutes. For some of you, they'll even be there from the beginning of the day until dismissal. That's a lot of time compared with those 12 minutes. So as you stand outside of your classroom door and you greet these students individually and you give them that valuable quality time, wow, what an impact that can make. That's for them. So go out there, speak with your students, and make a difference. Thank you, and I hope you'll join us for the Q&A.
All right. Thanks for a fantastic episode, everyone. And thanks to our great audience for watching and for the really insightful questions we've been getting in the chat, our social media channels, and emails. We're going to answer as many of these as we can today. Joining us today for the Q&A is wellness expert and host of our Healthy Habits for Teachers segment, Amanda Sparger. Thanks for joining us, Amanda.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right, and with us as always is the co-host of Launch Your Classroom, former educator and EPI's Director of Program Services, Ryan Hennessy. Ryan, glad you're here.
Hey, great to be back. Thanks.
All right, let's take a look at our first question. Alton writes in and says, I think I already have good rapport with my kids. Do I need to start doing rapport at the door this late in the school year? What do you think, Ryan?
All right, Alton, thanks for the question and congratulations on having good rapport with your students. Again, as we talked about in the episode, it's so important. As for the question here, do I need to start doing rapport at the door? My advice would be, yeah, absolutely. I would say that you should start doing it, but rather than think of it as starting something new, perhaps thinking of it as I'm going to implement this in to further grow the rapport that I have now. If you have that rapport with kids, I think the great benefit there for this strategy in particular is that you're going to probably have an easier time to get into those deeper things like those statements that we were talking about. You have things to talk about and notice, and hopefully, they'll have things to tell you. So why not, Alton? Take a good thing, make it better. Great question. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Fabiana who wants to know, can you recommend a good way to organize myself the night before school? Amanda?
Well, Fabiana, we talk a lot about preparation, and think about that pre and preparation. That means before. So just like you're printing out worksheets and everything to prepare your classes for the next day, you need to apply that same philosophy to yourself. So we talk about the night before getting your things ready. So that means maybe putting your car keys by the door. I mean, how many times have you spent a few minutes looking for those? Maybe you make your breakfast the night before. Maybe you lay your clothes out. I mean, it's going to be whatever works for you, but those are all some good tips to organize yourself. And if you've brought papers home, if you've been grading things, make sure those are in your bag before you're ready to go, and make sure that's by the door so you can just grab it and go. Thank you for your question, Fabiana.
Okay, Ryan, we've got an interesting one here. Nigel wants to know, I've been meeting students at the door already and it hasn't been working for them. The students don't seem to care. I heard one say that it's corny. Am I doing it wrong?
Hey, Nigel, great question. Again, I think that you're not doing it wrong. Let me say that. I would say it's important to remember that this is going to take some time, both for you and the students. But I encourage you to stick with it, okay? So if it hasn't been working for me, as you say here, then I want to make sure that I don't miss the opportunity for the day that it will work, which could be tomorrow morning, Monday morning. You don't know, Nigel. So I encourage you to stick with it. Do the students, do you think that they don't care? Do you think that the students maybe have a lot on their mind? We don't know. We only know what it maybe looks like to us. I assure you, and again, the research is there, you will get to the point where the students will care and they will start to look forward to it, even if it's just a hello. They will. Stay at it. If they say it's corny, joke with them. Say, if you think that's corny, you should hear one of my knock-knock jokes, right? Just have a little fun and just, again, be present, be authentic.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, we've got a question from Renford. I already have to wake up at 5 a.m. to get to school on time, and it feels like there's not enough time to take a moment to sit down and de-stress. Amanda, what should Renford do?
Right, so 5 a.m., that's already very early, and we want you to get good sleep. So I'm not saying that you should be waking up at 4:30 or 4 to give yourself that time, because ultimately that's not going to be productive either. But what you can do is, even if you just have half an hour, make sure you have a routine for that. That way, so that when you wake up at 5, you kind of can go on autopilot. If you know what you're doing first and you do things in the same order every single day, you're going to get to the things you need to get to. You're going to be able to work in that 5 minutes to just, take a few moments for yourself, because you're not going to, you're taking the difficulty out of, making those decisions that early. It's going to make things easier for you. So thank you for your question, Renford.
All right, My Wrong wants to know, what about standing out with an attendance sheet so that you can take attendance as they come in? Ryan, can we kill two birds with one stone here?
I love this question, My Wrong. Thank you. The reason I love it is because it shows a teacher mind at work, wanting to get that business part done, the thing you have to do, being efficient. That's part of what we strive to do in a lot of things. But in this case, I'm going to suggest that you don't do that. The spirit of the strategy, really at its core, is to purposefully do nothing except take that time and give it in little doses to kids that you teach every day. No attendance sheet, no phones, no anything other than a sincere greeting, whether it's just a good morning or if it's more of something that you want to prepare them for in the day. Make it just about that. And if you pour yourself into that for that reason, that's when you're going to see those great results. Thank you.
And a question from Jennifer. Many school children sleep late at night. As teachers, what should we do to counsel our students? Amanda?
Okay, so I think that you all experience that student, particularly maybe in high school, who is always sleeping in class, and they're like, oh, I only got 3 hours of sleep last night, and you're like, well, of course you're exhausted. And I think there's a combination of factors here. Sometimes you may have heard this, we kind of entered culturally like the sleep deprivation Olympics. And it's particularly prevalent maybe in your teenage years where you think, oh man, I only got 4 hours of sleep. Well, I only got 3 hours of sleep. And it kind of just becomes this, this test for how tough you are. So that's great that you bring this up. And some students are up late, maybe doing homework. There's a lot of different factors at play. But I think what you can do is, just by talking about the importance of a good night's sleep. There's a lot of research that backs this up, talking not only about how you're going to feel better and have more energy, but it increases your productivity. Your mind is sharper, you can engage more. And just like bringing that into your classroom, if you're able to integrate this into your lesson at all, if you're a science teacher, it's easy. But I think even in a lot of other subjects, you can take a few moments just to say, hey, I know you have a lot of homework and you've got a lot of things to do as busy students, but it's important to be organized and to prioritize getting rest so that you can perform well and you can come to school ready and feeling good. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Amanda. All right, Ryan. Clive wants to know, what do I do about students who are late?
So those are always going to exist, Clive. I know what you mean there. So what do we do? Do we need to stop what we're doing and take that moment to build rapport? I don't think so. There's a lot of reasons that students are late, and some of them are things that are best usually not brought to everyone's attention. So Clive, what I would suggest is when students who come in late, you can greet them at the next natural opportunity. Just say, hey, good morning, I'm glad you were able to make it here, and let it go for that day. However, I talked with Kyle a little bit earlier about preparative statements, and I talked about how you can stack things and use them to work with students. So this is a great opportunity. What I might do, especially if this is a student who has repeated difficulties making it to class on time, is the next time, the very next opportunity that I get to praise that student at the door for being on time, I'm going to say, you were here on time. That's awesome. Hey, I tell you what, there's some bell ringer work on there. Do your best at it, but I just want you to know I'm glad you're here today on time. That's awesome. And so what you're doing there is you're reinforcing that behavior that you want. You're not getting too punitive, going back over something that you can't really do anything about now. But yeah, I don't think you need to greet them when they come in late. Just do it when you get the opportunity. Thanks.
Okay. Now I have a question from Shanice. I'm still having a hard time getting preparative statements and how to use them. Can you please clarify, Ryan?
Yeah, but Shanice, I was just talking about preparative statements. So I believe Amanda, earlier you were talking about prepare, right? Being the word, right? So same thing here. You're going to think of these statements as little nudges, right? Small preparations or statements that will prepare a student for success in the coming day's activities. So what you're doing is you're finding little ways to kind of foresee troubles that may exist either in academics or behavior or whatever it may be, and you're just going to slightly just say something or let them know, something that you've been thinking about that's going to help them avoid some of those difficulties later. You're going to prepare that student for success. Sometimes those statements are like the multiplication example I gave, and sometimes they're just like, hey, you know what, yesterday you had a hard day. We all have them, but today's a new day, right? So we're going to have a great one. So I hope that's helpful. Of course, if you still have more questions about preparative statements, there's quite a bit about it in the text. And please send them in. Be glad to talk with you more about it. Thank you.
And Camilla wants to know, I don't have my own classroom. How can I make this work for me? What do we do about itinerant teachers?
Yeah, Camilla, I have also done some itinerant teaching in my past, and I do know that it presents a lot of challenges, specifically doing an at-the-door strategy when you don't have a door. Right? That's going to be difficult. So Camilla, I think there's kind of two ways to achieve this same effect. Remember, what you want to do is create a culture where the students understand that you care about them and that you have time for them, and also that you're able to use those preparative statements to make your classroom run better. So if you don't have a classroom, how can you find that time to do those things? Well, you can take 5 minutes at the beginning of a lesson. If you go and you teach the whole class, you may not be able to do that in 5 minutes. If you go into a classroom and you teach a small group, you probably could. And remember, these are not always very, very big. You could, or long statements. You could say, hey, good to see you this morning. And if someone has on like a sports team shirt, you could say, did you see the game on Sunday? Or, whatever you need to say. So that's one thing I would suggest. Just speak to every student for about 5 minutes. Now, if you don't have the ability to do that because of time, maybe you have 30 students in the class, here's an idea. It's maybe a little unique, but maybe you could partner up with the teacher that you're visiting that day. Maybe you go to 3 classrooms and you just say, hey, do you mind if I stand out here with you today and just say hello to students since I'll see them later? And then next week you do one of the other teachers and kind of rotate it out. You will get those results. You will build that rapport. You just got to take a little different approach. Good luck.
And this looks like the last question we'll have time for today. Renata wants to know, a lot of my mornings are really, really busy with other duties and colleagues. I think we can sympathize with that. How can I do this while working around my responsibilities?
Renata, yes, a really, really busy morning. That definitely means you're a teacher, I think. So depends on who the colleagues are and what they need. Obviously, we work with our colleagues very closely in our professional learning communities and our teams. And there's going to be times that you're going to need to work with them in the morning. That's realistic. If you're working on this strategy and a colleague comes over to you and it's urgent or they need to speak with you right then, the students are going to understand. The work that you will have done, if you commit to this strategy every day and you're present and you're authentic, when things like this happen, the students are going to understand. Okay, nothing would be wrecked, nothing would be messed up there. Now, of course, if it's an administrator or whatever, same thing, right? You're going to need to stop, and you're going to need to speak with your supervisors and help them with whatever it is they need to partner with you on. So the other thing being, how do I spend that time with colleagues while trying to work around my responsibilities? How do I do this strategy? It may be worth in your next team meeting saying, hey, this is a strategy that has a lot of research backing. I'm really excited about it. And I just want to let everyone know that this is what I'm going to be doing. So give me a week or two to kind of get it running with my students. If you have something that can wait, let's talk about it at planning, right? Let's talk about it at lunch. And tell them that you appreciate it, and you'll let them know how it goes. Hopefully they'll do it too, Renata.
All right, everyone, that's all the questions we have time for today. Please join us back here next week, October 26th at 4 p.m. Eastern for the next episode of Launch Your Classroom Live. Have you ever wanted to get your classroom under control without contributing to the chaos? If so, then you better join us next week when we take a look at hand signals for classroom management. To get the most out of next week's episode, you're going to want to take a look at your Launch Your Classroom handbook. If you don't already have a copy of Launch Your Classroom, then you're in luck, because today only, October the 19th, Volume 1, Building a Foundation for Learning, is 100% free to download. Just follow the link in the description below and get yourself a copy. And remember, to stay up to date on all the free professional development that EPI offers, why not subscribe to our YouTube channel? And while you're at it, click the bell icon to receive notifications when we go live. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you next time.